Today, our topic is going to be covering on a high level, what is stakeholder management, who is a stakeholder, and managing the stakeholders and their expectations as well. A few things that we'll be touching on tonight. We'll be touching on who is a stakeholder, what is stakeholder management itself, stakeholder management plan, the process, managing stakeholders' expectations, change process and control within Agile. So I would say within Agile because we're working within an Agile environment on this platform. So I would say Agile because change process and control with Waterfall is quite different. We'll be touching on winning a few points on winning over difficult stakeholders. Stakeholder power interest analysis, which you may have heard people calling it stakeholder matrix. Project stakeholder impact analysis, and stakeholder involvement using the RACI mapping document. Now, who is a stakeholder? Can we be muted, please, if we're not speaking? Okay. Someone is not muted. Okay, I'm just going to continue for the purpose of the recording. So who is a stakeholder? So a stakeholder is an individual, a group, or an organization that has an interest in or is affected by a business venture or the project and its outcome. So anybody that is directly involved in one way or the other within the business or on the project on the product that is being developed, the project that is being worked on, anybody that has an interest or is affected by the outcome of that project is a stakeholder. So it could be, we will see in one of the slides, the different stakeholders that we can have. So it could be it could range from the sponsor, from the executives, all the way down to even the staffs, to the project team. Anybody that has an interest in that project or in the organization, or anybody that is impacted by what is being developed is a stakeholder. Now, a stakeholder can be both internal or external. So we would have situations where you have stakeholders that are like third-party vendors, third-party software vendors. You have suppliers. These people are also stakeholders. So stakeholders can be both internal and external parties. And you can see that on the screen where it says such as your customers, the employees, the business partners, the suppliers, even the government. Even the government as a client, yeah, can be termed as a stakeholder. Now, looking at stakeholder management, what do we mean by stakeholder management? This refers to the process. So you have your stakeholders. You know, you already know that as a BA, I'm working on a project within this organization. And you know that you will definitely have stakeholders that you will be working with, that you will be liaising with. Now, you need to also know how important it is, and very important, on how to manage these stakeholders. So when we're talking about managing stakeholders, what do we mean by that? First of all, you can't just go into an organization as a BA and then just start working or start gathering requirements from every person that you come across within the organization. You want to go through a particular process of actually knowing who those stakeholders are. You need to identify. That's the first step that you would need to take, to identify who are your key stakeholders. Once you know who your key stakeholders are, then you want to start analyzing what their needs are. What are their needs? What are their expectations? You will usually not have 2, 3, 4, 5 stakeholders with the same expectations or needs, which is why as BAs, you go and gather requirements from different stakeholders. Now, understanding that process, that stakeholder management process, you would now look at it and say that as a stakeholder management, as a BA, you want to make sure that you monitor and improve your relationships with your stakeholders. Once you've identified who they are, you understand what their needs are, you understand what their expectations are, you analyze what their needs are, you need to manage that process and understand how to manage that process, how to organize that process, how to monitor that process, how to improve your relationship with those stakeholders, because you would need to have a trusting relationship with them. Now, a few of the stakeholders that I have on the screen here. So I have the client. Who is the client as a stakeholder? The clients, some people call them customers as well. So you can call them clients, you can call them customers. They are key stakeholders within an organization, within a project. Without the clients, without the customers, there will be no business. Because who are you developing that product for? Who are you building that product for? It's your users, your clients, your customers. So they are key stakeholders. We also have the external vendors, like I mentioned earlier on. With the external vendors, these are stakeholders that have their revenue tied up with the project. They sell goods and services to the business. They are external vendors, they're external suppliers. So they sell goods and services to the business, which means that the project success means a lot for them. It means a lot for them because then when you succeed on that project, it brings in more business for them. It also helps them to solidify relationship with the business. So they are also key stakeholders. They have an interest. In fact, I would even say that on some level, impact as well. They get impacted as well, because if that project is not successful based on anything from their side, then they would probably not have a good relationship with the business, or they might not even get more business from that. So we will look at stakeholder matrix in a bit, but let's just understand a few of the people that we would consider as stakeholders within a project or within an organization. We also have the project team. Now, a team member, your developers, even yourself as BAs, your product owner, your testers, your scrum masters, they have put in, or they will be putting in, effort and time, as well as reputation into the work that they are doing, into the project. So this makes them also a major part of that project, thereby being majorly affected or impacted as well if the project is successful or not successful. So the project team as well will be considered as stakeholders within that project. We have the SMEs. So the SMEs, we call them the subject matter experts. So these are the people who knows the most about the business process or the technical architecture. That's why they call them subject matter experts. They provide the knowledge and the expertise in a specific area, in a specific subject, in a specific business area, or even technical area for that project or for the entire program itself. So that's why they're called subject matter experts. They are also key stakeholders within a business, within an organization, within the project itself. Now, finally, I have here the sponsor. Now, the name says it all. The project sponsor is part of the executive leadership in the organization that owns the project. So they are well invested in that project as well. They are also key stakeholders within a project, within an organization. So these are some, I've just highlighted here, some key stakeholders that you would find within a project, within an organization. Key steps for stakeholder managing process. Now, you've joined again, like I said, an organization as a BA. They've employed you for a reason. Now, you need to start liaising with stakeholders. There are certain steps that you need to take in order for you to start creating that relationship with the stakeholders. There are certain steps for you to take in order for you to ensure that you start liaising with them, you start engaging with them, you start creating a relationship with them, you start to understand their specific needs. So these are some of the steps. So I will go through each of the steps one after the other. So let's look at identifying the customer. When we say identify and analyze who the customers are. Now, the first step in stakeholder management, for you to even go into stakeholder management, the first step for you is to identify the stakeholders of your project. Now, how do you identify the stakeholders of your project? You've just joined. You barely know anyone within the organization. Now, you need to be proactive as a BA. You can identify your stakeholders by brainstorming with your team members, your product owner, your line manager, asking them who would be the necessary, the people that I need to be speaking with or speaking to, who are the people that I need to reach out to understand this, or to have more knowledge on that, or to have more understanding or clarification in this area, on that area. So if you've just joined the team, they will probably know, even your developers, they will probably know 1 or 2 or 3 key people that you should be speaking to about different areas. Your product owner is a good person to reach out to as well and ask these questions from, because remember that your product owner is a key line, between the business and the team. So your product owner will be a good person that would know those key stakeholders that you need to be speaking with. If you work in an organization, you've joined an organization where you have a line manager. Your line manager is another key area, another key person that you can speak to, that you can reach out to help understand these stakeholders that you need to be speaking to. Now, remember that they'll probably give you a couple of names. But again, we will get to that part of the slides. They might give you a couple of names that you need to be speaking to. That's fine. They've given you 10 names. You have 10 names on your list. That is you starting to identify who those stakeholders are. We will get to the point where after identifying them, you need to now analyze them. You need to now prioritize them. Yeah? So identifying your stakeholders would be the first step for you as BAs in stakeholder management. I'm not sure if we have Scrum Masters on this call. I would have also touched on Scrum Master side of stakeholder management as well, but I will stick to the BA, because then whatever we go through on this in this session would work for Scrum Masters as well anyway. Yeah, so you can do this by brainstorming with your team, making a list of all possible people who might be positively or negatively affected by that project. Now, when you're gathering these names, when you're trying to identify these stakeholders, some of the things that I would advise that you take into consideration would be, who are those people that are interested in that project? Who are those people that support the project? Who are those people who have the power over that project? Who are those people that are investing in the project? Again, your sponsors, investors. Who are the people that might benefit from the project? And again, who are the people who want your project to fail? Yeah. So you will be surprised. You might be surprised by that. But you do have people like that sometimes. Because again, remember, within organizations, sometimes you have certain politics in play. So you need to start identifying who those people are. Now, moving on quickly, analyze and prioritize the stakeholders. Now you've identified your stakeholders. Once you have created a list of all possible stakeholders, you need to now start to analyze and evaluate them so that you can begin to map them out. And we'll touch on the mapping side of things in a bit. You need to start mapping them out, start understanding what priority, on what level is this stakeholder? What priority does this stakeholder have? Where would I map this stakeholder? Where would I map that stakeholder? So this essentially means that you categorize your identified stakeholders. A common and widely practiced method, let me put it that way, of mapping your stakeholder is through stakeholder metrics. That's the interest or the power, interest, and greed. You may have seen that or heard about it. Yeah, but it's a very good method for analyzing and mapping out your stakeholders, because it helps you to classify those stakeholders based on their level of interest and their level of power or influence on the organization or even on the project that you're working on. Now, develop a communication plan. So let's touch on communication. Develop a communication plan. As BAs, as business analysts, some of the skills that key skills that you should have would be attention to detail and communication, great communication skills. Yeah, because communication is one of the main elements used in stakeholder management. You want to liaise with your stakeholders. You need to have good communication skills, at least. Yeah, good communication skills. It's important that you make a communication plan as well to help you deliver the right message to the right stakeholder at the right time. So there are some requirements that you will need to gather that if you come to me, I'm able to help you out with certain requirements. If you go to Deji, he understands certain requirements that he can help you out with, that he can give to you, that I may not be able to give to you. Yeah, so you need to have a communication plan in place that would help you to deliver the right message to the right stakeholder at the right time. Now, to help you to do that, because I know you might be asking the question, how would I know what to ask Tolu that I shouldn't be asking Deji, or what to ask Deji that Tolu cannot help with? Yeah, for you to do that, you need to have a stakeholder, your stakeholder profile in hand. And that profile would help you list out their needs. So on the stakeholder profile for Tolu, for example, for myself, yeah, if you have that, this is Tolu. Tolu is you know what my role is, and you list out what my needs are, what are my interests, what are my responsibilities, what level of power and interest do I have within the organization or the project itself? What are my goals as a stakeholder? What communication channels does Tolu prefer as a stakeholder? And we'll touch on that a little bit as well as we go on, because you probably might not have all your stakeholders preferring the same communication modes of communication. Let me put it that way. Yeah. Now, your communication plan should include details such as the key message with the description of the type of information that you want to communicate. Yeah. Your engagement approach to the stakeholders, with the stakeholders, your engagement approach. What's the best engagement approach for Tolu? What's the best engagement approach for Deji? What's the best engagement approach for Bolu? The communication channels, such as, does Tolu prefer a face-to-face, a person-to-person communication method, emails, video calls? These days where you have a lot of people working virtually now anyway, you would probably be using more of emails and video calls. But I know there's even more hybrid ways of working going on now as well. So there are lots of face-to-face meetings as well now. But you need to also understand that the communication channel for your stakeholders, for each of your stakeholders, the frequency of engagement or communication. So for example, I have a stakeholder personally at work now that at the start of a new project, I reached out to this stakeholder. I had a call with this stakeholder, a virtual call actually with this stakeholder on Teams. And part of the conversation, part of what I had on my agenda was to make sure that I check with this guy to say, how often, would you like me to give you updates on the progress of work being done? Do you get what I mean? Would you like a weekly update? Would you like a fortnight update? Do you get what I mean? And then again, I'm asking questions from the stakeholder to say, if they say, okay, no, I'd rather prefer a fortnightly update. Okay, that's fine. So would you rather me send you an update on a slide, on a one-pager slide, or would you rather me send you updates, on just a Word document? What would you prefer? Because some stakeholders, some people believe that when you start sending updates on Word documents, it starts to get too wordy. And they don't have that time. They don't have that time to read through all those 10 pages that you might be sending to them. Do you guess what I mean? So sometimes even when we use slides, we're able to sort of like would I say, caution ourselves, or we're able to pull back a little bit. Because the moment you're using slides for updates and you say that you're having like 20-something slides, of course, you will start to check yourself to say, oh my God, no, she's not going to go through all of these slides. So you start cutting that. But sometimes when we use Word document, for example, we get carried away. Yeah, so you want to make sure that you're also checking frequency of engagements or communications with them. How often do you want me to reach out to you? The participants of each mode of communication. So I have two stakeholders that I'm reaching out to on the same issue. I want to make sure that if Bolu and Deji, for example, are stakeholders that, I've gathered requirements from, they have, some level of interest that is similar. I need to pass a message to Deji or an update to Deji that I need to also pass the same update to Bolu, for example. Then I want to make sure that if I'm sending that update to Deji, I'm also making sure that Bolu is copied in that email. Yeah, so it's not like I'm sending to Bolu separately, I'm sending to Deji separately. They're both copied in that email. And again, finally, distribution for the communications as well. Okay, so I'll move on very quickly from that. Engage with your stakeholders. Keep stakeholders and execute your communication plan. That communication plan that we just spoke about now, this is where you will actually execute that plan. You choose an appropriate communication approach based on the type of based on the type of stakeholder that you are dealing with. So again, that touches back on the previous, the identified preferred communication method we spoke about. Choose an appropriate communication approach based on the type of stakeholder you're dealing with. You would usually not have stakeholders that would want the same approach or would want the same thing, that their needs are different, the preferred mode of approach or communications are different. Yeah, concentrate on the most important stakeholders first. So again, your stakeholder mapping comes into play. Your stakeholder matrix comes into play. So you have the stakeholders that are like high impact, low interest kind of thing. We'll look at that in a minute. We'll get to that slide. So you want to make sure that once you've identified your stakeholders, you've analyzed your stakeholders, you want to also make sure that you are concentrating a bit more on the most important stakeholders first, and probably the less important ones later. And again, you can use your stakeholder mapping grid, your power interest grid for this. So for example, let's say you're handling a high power, high interest stakeholder. Then use more engaging modes of communication with them. Yeah, extensive consultations, phone calls, virtual meetings, face-to-face meetings for as often as they want it. You would have checked that with them. Yeah, so if you have stakeholders that you're handling and they have high power, high interest, use more engaging modes of communication with them. Okay, classify level of communication. So you will see that we're talking a lot about communication here. That's why I said at the start that some of the key skills as BAs, business analyst, that you should have attention to details and great communication skills. So when we say classify level of communication, bear with me 1 second, please. So what do we mean by classify level of communication? What that simply means is work out which stakeholder wants full progress details and which ones prefer high-level details. Again, this is what that means. You have two stakeholders, and I will use myself and Deji as an example again. For myself as a stakeholder, I might request from you to say that when you're sending me any updates or progress reports or whatever, progress details or whatever, I would prefer like a detailed report. A detailed report. Deji, on the other hand, might say to you, Deji, he might just be so busy, he doesn't have that time to go in depth into detailed reports. So he might just say to you, he prefers a high-level report. So you need to classify the different level of communications with your different stakeholders. So what all of this is saying to you now is that don't think that because you have 10 stakeholders, those 10 stakeholders, you would manage them the same way. No, you would not necessarily manage all your stakeholders the same way. That's why you would find people saying, oh, I have a difficult stakeholder. You'll have people saying, oh, my stakeholders are okay. Yeah, there's open communication with them. They're always there to support and all of that. And some people will say they are very difficult stakeholders. So if you have 5 stakeholders, you will need to make sure that you identify who they are, you analyze them, you have a communication plan in place that would suit each and every one of them. Because what works for A might not work for B. Yeah? Now, monitor your stakeholders. Make sure you constantly observe and monitor your stakeholders and make updates as you go. Attention to detail. Yeah? Have your stakeholders' opinion changed? Have their requirements changed? Have their as their priorities changed? Are there any issues that they may be facing? So when some people say that, oh, I have a very difficult stakeholder, and I will give you an experience that I have had. Sometimes they're not being, most of them, some of them are not being difficult on purpose. Yeah. So are there any issues they may be facing? Have they shifted to a different category in the power interest grade in the stakeholder mapping? Again, we will get to that, but just have it at the back of your mind that the stakeholder mapping, the power interest grid changes. It's not stagnant. So a stakeholder that you have on high interest, high impact or high power today might change to high interest, low power tomorrow. You need to also keep an eye on that. When things changes, make sure you update that mapping and change it around as well. Yeah, so you need to monitor your stakeholders, monitor them, constantly observe them, and make updates as they go, as you go rather. Make changes as you go to your stakeholder mapping, to your stakeholder plan. Yeah, because things can change. Some stakeholders might get moved on to other projects. They might get moved on to other, they might even, move on to other organizations. So you want to make sure you're keeping an eye on that. Yeah? Now, accurately map expectations. So that speaks for itself. That's self-explanatory. When you're mapping your expectations from your stakeholders, make sure that you are doing it accurately. Attention to detail. Yeah? Okay. So we also have keeping stakeholders in the loop. Now, this also goes back to communication again. And I cannot overemphasize communication with stakeholders, guys. Yeah, so please let's keep that at the back of our minds as business analysts. Keep your stakeholders in the loop. Make sure that after you've already checked with them their preferred mode of communication, you've checked this with them, you've checked that with them, you've noted this down, you've documented it for your own purpose. Make sure that if a stakeholder wants a progress update or whatever, weekly or fortnightly or monthly, which, however they want it, make sure that you're constantly keeping them in the loop. Make sure that with Agile, we talk about visibility, we talk about transparency, we talk about openness. So let's make sure that they are constantly kept in the loop. Again, another way that we do that as well as a Scrum team again is whilst we're inspecting and adapting. We have our Scrum review, the demo, the show and tell, the sprint review that we do at the end of our sprints. So we have our stakeholders there. We're keeping them in the loop. They're seeing the progress of work that has been done. They're giving us feedback. We're taking those feedbacks on and we're working on those feedbacks to improve on those feedbacks as well. Yeah. Share evidence and research. So with share evidence and research, again, communication again comes up in that area. So I had a project that I worked on as a PA, and it was the initial ask was that we needed to, it was a new project. So the stakeholders, the business itself wasn't sure which way to go. So they were looking at, do we build this product ourselves or do we buy from a third-party software vendor? So they weren't sure which way to go. So I joined as a BA, and the first thing I had to do was to help them make that decision, build or buy. Should we build ourselves in-house, or should we get a third-party software vendor in and buy from a third-party software vendor? So I had to now carry out not just a build or buy analysis, I had to start reaching out to third-party software vendors. A lot of them. I would reach out to a lot of them. I'll carry out research on the different third-party software vendors that we have, that we can use, that, relating to that product that we're talking about, that we want to either build or buy. I had to put in meetings with them. I had to do this different research and all of these meetings. So, to help me understand what would benefit the company itself. If they build, what will it look like? What will it cost them? What will be the implications? What are the complexities involved? Do we have the architectural sort of, would I say, platform or whatever to do that? Or do we need to, or should we go ahead and buy? If we go ahead and buy from the third party vendors. So I had to do all of this research. I had to get all this evidence that I had to present back to them. So as a BA, if you find yourself in the situation where you have to do that, make sure that you have your evidence and the results of your research well detailed to share back to your stakeholders. And then finally, we have the manage stakeholders differently. So I think I touched on this earlier on when I said you would not use make sure that you don't find yourself in a situation whereby you have probably identified 10 stakeholders and then you feel like, oh, well, they're all stakeholders, so I can manage them all the same way. Manage your stakeholders differently. Ensure that you identify the different ways that your stakeholders want to be liaised with. Okay, so moving on. Change, process, and control. So I did mention earlier that with Agile, it's a bit different. With Waterfall, change process with Waterfall would usually take so much documentation, and the process is usually quite different from Agile itself. So I've got a few bullet points on there when it comes to change, process, and control within an Agile environment. So the first one is embrace change and make adjustments. So, within Agile, within Scrum, we develop iteratively. Yeah. So at the end of the sprint, we carry out our sprint demo review where we have the stakeholders and, users, they join the call, we demo the product, what we've done during that sprint to them, they give us feedback. And, with the feedback, there might come a few adjustments that needs to be made. There might be a few changes that they've requested for during that review. Then we take that on board, we embrace it, and we go back within our team. We go back within our team, we discuss these changes, and we look at with the product owner, with these changes that we've brought on board now, we already have a backlog. How do we prioritize this? Yeah, those changes, are we able to bring them into the next sprint, or do we have higher priority work that we want to bring into next sprint, and then this can come in later? So all of this analysis will go on, but the fact remains that we, as an agile team, we embrace change and we make adjustments as we go. We inspect and we adapt. The second bullet point there says design to customer expectations. Now, the ability to demo working applications means that you can design for customers' expectations. So rather than create and develop an application workflow based on written requirements or the feature descriptions, keep the customer informed of the application and its functionality. Keep them informed, because that's way, when you keep them informed of the functionality, the application, and all of that, then that way you would be in a good place to say that, yes, we're designing to their expectations. That way you would understand what their expectations are, because you're keeping them informed and you're getting the best out of them whilst you're keeping them. Because once you keep them informed, they would also respond to you. You're informing them, this is a design, this is what we're working on. You have a prototype, for example. They look at it, they tell you, oh, okay, yes, this is to our expectations, or no, this is not up to our expectations. You have that conversation with them, and these are the sort of things that would help control that change process, because You don't want to lose that level of communication with them, and then at the end of the day, they come back and ask, and then it's not what they're expecting at all. It's not what they've asked for at all. So even when you're detailing, when you're gathering your requirements, when you're detailing your requirements, you want to make sure that you're keeping that attention to detail. You want to make sure that when they say, when for example, let me use this as an example. When a stakeholder says they want a particular feature on a website, for example, green. Now we have different shades of green. So as a BA, they've said to you they want that as a green color. But have you actually asked them the question if they have a specific shade of green in mind? So you just take that away and you just decide, oh, emerald green. Do you get what I mean? Now, what if you come back and, that's not the shade of green that they want? So you could have actually managed that process. You could have controlled that process from the start if you had asked the right question at that stage. Yeah. Emphasize user stories from the start. So with agile development teams address I think we should all know that by now, the highest value stories in the earliest iteration. So you're going into an iteration, you do your backlog refinement, the PO prioritizes the stories, the features that would bring that are of highest values and stuff like that. Yeah. So the earlier the developers addresses things like technology challenges, architectural challenges, the better the customers will understand application functions. Yeah. So sometimes you have stakeholders that they want this, but they don't even know. Oh, we want to build a 40-legged table, for example. That's what they want. Is that actually what they need? You take that requirement away to say, oh, this is what they want, and then you put it in a user story, and then you now go ahead and start developing it. But the thing is, the earlier you start to address with them, the earlier you start to make them understand the technology challenges that will come with this, maybe architectural challenges, the better, the quicker that they will start to understand how that application will function. The quicker they will start to understand what is feasible and what is not feasible. And that way, you're also starting from you're also from the start beginning to work on control the change process as well, manage the change process as well. Rather than at the end of it all, at the end of the sprint, that they now come and tell you, no, actually, we don't think that's going to work. Again, if they do that, we take the change on board. But there are certain changes that comes at a later stage that we could have managed better or controlled better at the start. Yeah. Then we have the review and prioritize changes. So when the product owner, the PO, introduce changes during iterations, during the sprint, yeah, the expectation is that they prioritize them for the team. Yeah, they compare the existing stories to the upcoming changes, and then they determine how the developers can logically and efficiently develop them. Yeah, with the least interruption. So it's not best practice, even though some people do it, which is why we always say Scrum Masters should keep an eye on things like this. And BAs, again, please, keep an eye on things like this as well. Because remember that even as BAs, you would find yourselves, in a situation where you might be like de facto PO, de facto product owners as well. Yeah. So don't just simply get a change, a new requirement or a change to your requirement, and then you just simply drop it into the backlog. Yeah. So let's try and avoid doing things like that. So you want to make sure that you're reviewing and prioritizing those changes. So now let's say you've started your sprint as an example, and the product owner or a stakeholder comes with a change and says, oh, this is really high priority. This feature is really high priority now. We need to take this feature into the sprint. We need you guys to start working on this and and all of that. That is fine. We embrace change, we're flexible, we're agile. But then there are questions that needs to be asked. Yeah, questions like, they just come to us now and he said, oh, the business needs this feature to be developed. We know you guys have started your sprint 2 days ago, but we need this to go into sprint. So this is me saying to DJ, oh, okay, that's fine. But we need to review. I need to review with the team, with the developers, review this new requirement or this change. We need to also prioritize it, because again, we're taking into consideration that if every change that comes in, we accept and we just take it into sprint, are we actually going to be able to deliver it at the end of that sprint? Have we looked at the implications of that new requirement? Have we looked at the complexities of that new requirement? Have we, if we have enough capacity on the team to actually take on that new requirement? Do we even understand what that new requirement entails, or how big or small it is? Have we sized it, or have we estimated the work itself? So when they come to you with new requirements, you don't necessarily have to say, oh, no, we can't take that in. We can't do that because we've started our sprint already. We're midway into sprint. No, not necessarily. Do you get what I mean? So you can just say things like, okay, yeah, that's fine, but let me just check with the team to understand, for us to better understand what this ask is. We need to better understand if there are any complexities, if there, if we can actually deliver this at the end of the sprint. Do you get what I mean? It might be a big piece of work that even if we decide to take it in, the developers go, oh yeah, Tolu, that's fine. We can work on this. But that means that we need to drop one of the other tickets that we've taken into sprint. For us to accommodate this in sprint, we need to drop this, or we need to drop that based on the capacity or based on our velocity as a team, something like that. Do you get what I mean? And they can be happy to take it in. And then you communicate that back to the stakeholder or the product owner to say, yeah, we're happy to take this in. I've checked with the team. We've actually broken this feature, this requirement down. We've broken it down. It's something that we can actually work on within the sprint. Yeah. Or I might actually go to the stakeholders or the product owner and say, okay, we're happy to take this into sprint. We've broken it down. The guys have looked at it and all of that, but we will need to deprioritize one of those the stories that we've taken into sprint already for us to accommodate this. So of all of the stories already in sprint, which ones would you deem the least priority to this new one and the other ones within the sprint? Then you look at that, you review, you prioritize those changes, and you see what you can take in. Yeah, if it's a big piece of work and they say they really want you to start working on it, you follow the same process. But then because it's a big piece of work, you can actually look at slicing that into two and say, okay, because this is a big piece of work we've estimated with the team, we're happy to start off working on this. And then if it's okay, if it's okay with you, with the business or the stakeholders, that we complete the work next sprint. So that way, they already have an understanding that you will not be completing the entire development of that feature, that sprint. That way, they already have an understanding that you're starting to work on that feature, that sprint, to complete the next sprint. So you're constantly reviewing and prioritizing those changes. Now, moving on very quickly because of our time. Manage between sprints. Yeah. Now, this is simply giving the developers time to look over upcoming changes and synchronize their work as well. So that you keep them and the application release on schedule. So, which is very similar to what I just spoke about now. You're midway into sprints and you have a change coming in. How would you manage that change? How would you manage that request? How would you control it? Yeah. Now, keep user stories updated and accurate. So, so once you have a change that has come in, you want to make sure that whatever user stories is going in, you want to make sure that you have all the details in it. The product owner must keep the stories up to date. Even yourself as business analyst, because you also work on the stories, must keep the stories up to date with accurate description and acceptance criteria. Yeah, there is no waste. There is no bigger waste or larger waste of time than when a developer starts to develop or starts to write code to the wrong story details, when they have the wrong details or details that are not unclear and, ambiguous acceptance criteria. Yeah, not only does that interrupt productivity, which we don't want, it also frustrates all the members of the team. Can we please be muted if we're not speaking, please, because we're recording this. Admin, please, can you help mute that person? Thank you. Oh, I hope you didn't mute me in the process. Let me just check that I'm not muted. Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm not muted. So please, if we're not speaking, let's just stay muted so that we don't disrupt the flow of the session. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you have the accurate descriptions and acceptance criteria in the stories. Even when you're updating the story with a change, maybe the change might just even be, oh, we said we wanted this particular functionality this way, but we don't want it this way again. We want it that way. You want to make sure that even if you have a story within your sprint for that particular functionality, you want to make sure that you're updating that story and keeping it accurate with accurate descriptions, accurate and detailed acceptance criteria. We don't want our developers to, waste their time writing codes or developing or building a product to the wrong stories, the wrong details, if you get what I mean. Yeah. And then we have communicate with developers. So because of time, I'm going to try and go a little bit more quicker now, guys. Bear with me. Communicate with developers. Again, you want to make sure that you're sharing any design changes. If you get a change, if you receive a change, you want to make sure you're sharing the changes with your developers and schedule them into your iteration. Are we taking it into the sprint? Must it go into this sprint, or does it go into next sprint? Can we take it into the next sprint? Yeah. So if you don't communicate changes to your developers, they will simply not get it done because they don't know anyway. And what they don't know, they won't do, they won't work on. If you don't provide details on the change in the story, you're not likely to get the output that you expect. You're not likely to get the output that the stakeholder expects. Yeah, so take the time as early as possible to talk to the developers about a change that is coming from your stakeholder or from your customers. So even if you're mid-sprint, you're already developing, you're already within a sprint, the change might not be a change on any of the work that you're doing within that sprint, but it might be a change that is being spoken about in the background. It might be a change that they're talking about that, you feel like, okay, this is coming our way. This is coming our way very soon. Do you get what I mean? You don't have to go to your developers and say, oh, definitely there's going to be a change. No, but you just want to start ringing that bell in their heads, that, okay, there are conversations about, we might be getting a change coming our way. Just want you guys to have that at the back of our minds. Just, you just want to make sure that you start communicating that with them. Nothing, should I say verified? Do you know what I mean? So it's not like you're going to go to them and say, oh, there's definitely a change coming. If you don't know it's definitely, you don't need to go and tell them it's definite. Again, communication. Yeah. All right. Another thing that I will just touch on again is, before I move on from this, is as BAs, there is another skill, and I think with everyone, to be honest with you, there's a skill that we also need to try and imbibe as well. And it's the skill of saying no without actually saying no. Yeah. It's the skill of saying no without you actually saying no. So don't go and promise that you would, to a stakeholder, that you would deliver something, that you would deliver a feature, unless you have verified with the developer that it is possible. Because trust me, there are certain features, there are certain functionalities that needs investigation to be carried out on them. And who will be carrying out this investigation? Who will be carrying out all these technical investigations? Your developers. So when you receive a change, don't promise the stakeholders that, oh, that's fine. Yeah, we'll get that done in 2 days. When you don't even understand yet what it would entail, what work would go into that. what it would entail to actually develop that particular functionality. You don't even understand yet what the challenges are that the developers might face. Remember, they're the ones actually getting their hands dirty on this thing. Yeah, again, collaborate with your testers as well. So when we talk about developers, it used to be called the development team, but now it's called developers. So when you talk about developers are not just your coders, the guys that do the coding or the guys that goes into developing the product itself. Your QAs, your testers, they are also within that circle of developers. We call them developers. Be it a tester, be you a developer, you're coding or whatever, they are all called developers. So when you communicate with your developers about changes to a particular story or feature, don't forget to include these QAs, the software testing team members. Don't forget to include them in that conversation. Yeah, when you provide your QAs with as much information as possible as they need, yeah, which they can use to create more effective tests and improve the application's quality. Yeah, the better understanding rather by your QAs leads to more thorough test coverage. Yeah, when they have better understanding of these things, it leads to more thorough test coverage. So you don't want to leave them out. You don't want to say, oh, Tolu says it's the developers that we need to carry along, and then you just leave your QAs aside. No, they are also developers. They are also seen and termed as developers. So remember that when the developers are developing, these guys are the ones that are actually doing the testing. So please, let's carry them along. Handle changes efficiently. So in some projects, in some organizations, you have some things they call the gated development approach. So we do it on our side as well. Trust me, it's anti-pattern to agile, but again, it's should I say it's sort of like the culture, it's what they do, kind of. So in some cases you would have some gated development approaches, where teams handle changes through a change control board. Yeah, so you have we call them the governance board. We call them the governance board. So you have this change control board. You have this governance board. They discuss these changes, they accept or they would request your proposal. So for every stage of work, we have, for my place of work, we have the discovery stage, and for you to move on from the discovery stage to actually go into development, we have a gate procedure that we need to go through the governance gates and make sure that everything regarding discovery has been completed, and the BAs are really hands-on on it at my place of work. So it's important that we note that as well, that you might find yourself in a situation as a BA, you're working in an organization where they have certain gated development approaches, where they have a team that, they're like the control board, the change control board. If that's the structure that they have within that organization, you need to understand that as well. Yeah, this change control board, they discuss and then they either accept or reject your governance documentation. Yeah, trust me, this method takes time. It takes a bit of time. We usually do it at the start. We usually start before the project starts anyway, and then we continue during the project. But it does take excessive amount of time, and it's, like I said, it's counter to agile approach. And then you will find some of these things happening in some of these organizations, even though they say they're working within an agile environment. It's counter to agile approach. Yeah, if you can manage it or help it, and if you can help it, don't wait for days or weeks or months for a change decision from a set board. Look for the right people, identify the right people within that board, and start having conversations with them. Yeah, the product owners. And again, when we say product owners, BAs, remember that you can find yourself in a situation where you are recruited on a project, even as a product owner. Or you might not even have a product owner on that project, but you're a BA on there. You're like a de facto product owner. Yeah, So always remember that you would need to gather your developers together and discuss every change that comes across along with them. Then finally, on that bullet point, we have manage customers' expectations. So the product owner must communicate with the customers prior to application release. Yeah. But also during the development process, anyway, during the course of development, they will still need to communicate with customers, with the users. Yeah. So that the customers would understand what to expect in a particular release. They understand what is coming their way. They understand what has changed, and they understand why that change has happened. So even as BAs, you find yourselves in a situation whereby you might be asked to prepare things like release notes. Yeah, and your release notes would include would include this information to the customers, to the users. Yeah, where you're explaining to them what's coming with that release, what has changed within the should I say the product, what has changed, what's with the release, why has this change happened. Yeah, so the more your customer is aware of what is coming their way, the better they are prepared. Yeah, the better prepared they will be for that release. Yeah, especially if that release would include things like they would need the customers would need like maybe training sessions or demos and things like that. Yeah, so manage their expectations. Okay, so how to deal with stakeholders' changing requirements. Okay, so I'm going to run through this very quickly as well. How do we deal with stakeholders' changing requirements? Pay attention to communication. So you will see that communication is coming up a lot here. It's quite vital. It's important when you're managing stakeholders. So we can't really, we can't overemphasize that. Yeah. So pay attention to communication. Keep internal and external lines of communication open and receptive. Yeah. Remember that again, your stakeholders are not just the stakeholders that you have within your organization. You might have external stakeholders as well. Like I mentioned earlier on, your suppliers are also stakeholders. So you want to make sure that you're keeping that line of communication open and receptive. Be direct and ensure that you understand everything expected of the project team. Yeah, you want to make sure that you're conveying the implications of additions and changes on the project constraints. Yeah, you want to convey those implications. So again, as a business analyst, when there's a change in your requirement, or there's a new requirement or a change mid-sprint or whatever, this is why it's important that you involve your developers in the conversations. Yeah, because when you involve them in the conversations, they are the ones that will be developing, they're the ones that will be doing the coding, they're the ones that will be doing the testing. So they understand the amount of time, the effort that would go into taking this change on, or this changes on. They understand it, they would estimate it, they would understand the technical implications to it. Yeah, so you want to make sure that when you understand that from your developers, you want to make sure that you're conveying those implications to the stakeholders as well, to say that this addition to the requirements or these changes to the requirements, these are the implications of it. Yeah, you want to also, as BAs, instead of, I think I mentioned this earlier as well, very briefly, instead of you reading between the lines. So someone tells you something, for example, they say, oh, we want this to be green. Instead of you just reading between the lines or you assuming, oh, okay, they want it to be green, and you're not asking the right question. Ask them to, find an appropriate way to ask them to spell out the details. I want something green. You should be asking me if I have a particular shade of green in mind. Do you get what I mean? You need to be asking me. I have a project that I'm working on at work. It's a new project, and we only started this month. Yeah, and some expectations were actually a new project with three products within that one project. Yeah. And the expectations and the deadline for those 3 products within that one project, 2 of them we can meet conveniently. But the third one is a big piece of work. So I've already been having conversations on that particular one with regards to timeline. I've started to be honest with stakeholders, you know, with my stakeholders, internal and external, on the implications of the deadline that we've been given, because it's not realistic. Yeah. So know how to say no without saying no. So I'm not refusing that product. I'm not saying we can't do it, but I've spoken to my developers, I've spoken to the team, and it's not just feasible within the deadline. And that's not something I'm going to keep to myself, because what would end up happening is that we would end up not delivering that third product. And I don't want that. So I've started to make them understand, you know, what are the technical challenges that we're going to be having with this and all of that, and the implication it will have on the deadline. So we've been given a deadline of end of March, but I'm saying to these guys that if we take this particular one on, end of March is not feasible. And the question, and see, the thing is this, that I would also suggest that we start doing. When you go to your stakeholders or your product owner, whoever you go to, with the intention of saying no without saying no, or with the intention of saying to them that something is not feasible or we might not be able to achieve something, make sure you're not just going in with a problem. Go in with the problem and make sure that before you go in, you have also started to research and analyze solutions as well. So you're going in with a problem, you're going in to highlight a risk to them, but again, you're going in to profile mitigations. So we can't do this. We might not be able to do this way, but we could possibly do it that way. So they can decide to say, okay, yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can do it that way. Or they might even give you their own suggestion on how to go about it. So me going into that call, I'm going into that call, well, not I'm going into that call. I went into that call today and I said, well, based off the estimate that these guys, the developers have given on the team, on this particular product, we can do it. We can definitely do it. But we will need at least 2 extra sprints to complete it. And what that means is that this particular product, this third one, we will not be able to deliver this one realistically by the end of March, but we can deliver by the end of April. I'm waiting for that decision back tomorrow now to say if they're going for that or if they're coming up with another suggestion. But what I've done is I've highlighted the risk to delivery to them, but I've also said to them, well, we could do it this way. We could complete it, but we would, you know, the guys would need at least two more sprints for that completion to happen. Yeah. So pay attention to communication. Create a requirement approval process. So running through this very quickly again, with the help of your stakeholders, establish a procedure that lays out the sequence of actions and interactions moving forward. Yeah. Ensure that any deviation is recognized as change or hindrance Let me put it that way. Spend more time in requirement analysis. Again, very important. So you're going to meet with a stakeholder. See, so some or most of the things that I'm talking about right now are things that can help you either control some changes that that you could have controlled from the start. Yeah, or it could help you to deal with stakeholders changing requirements. So when you spend more time, we have people BAs that goes into requirement elicitation meetings with stakeholders. And yes, the stakeholder has said they only have 30 minutes. Do you get what I mean? That's fine. You know that 30 minutes might not be enough for you, but what you want to do is you want to make sure you're going into that 30 minutes call prepared with your top priority questions. By the end of the call, there are some questions that you might not get through to asking that you can just say to them, I've got a few more questions that I need to run past you, but if it's okay with you, I can just put those into an email. If you're able to respond via email, that would be well appreciated. So you want to go in prepared. You want to spend more time in requirement analysis. Sometimes you don't have that much time to spend, but the time that you have to spend, make it work. But the thing with this one is that looking at the number of projects that fails now these days, some of them or a lot of them, quite a good percentage of them fails due to poor requirement management. Yeah, so this might be something that we keep repeating all the time, but it's important for us to keep repeating it. Some of these projects, they fail due to poor requirement management. So make sure that you're spending adequate time in understanding the problem statement that motivates the project, or even the existing system that you're replacing or that you're working on or that you're developing or that you're building. Spend adequate time in understanding the problem statement. If you don't understand the problem statement, how can you start preferring solutions? So it's very important that you understand the problem statement. Yeah, make sure that you're not leaving any detail of requirements gathered from your stakeholders inadequately. Sorry, apologies, guys. Sorry, apologies. I forgot I had a I needed to cancel a call with Scrum Masters, but that's fine. So guys, make sure that you leave no detail of requirements gathered from your stakeholders inadequately analyzed. Remember that, I'm sure you've gone through this with the other tutors. Remember that it's one thing for you to gather your requirements. When you gather your requirements as BAs, you will need to analyze those requirements. So make sure that whatever requirements you have gathered, make sure that they are all adequately analyzed. Yeah, get clear SLAs. So get clear SLAs. So SLAs is what we call like service level agreements. I don't know if some or all of us understand what SLAs are, but you might just want to do a bit more research on that. So they're just like several service level agreements that should be carefully worded and on time. So let agreements clearly state the terms of the collaboration, the work environment, the deliverables before you even begin. You can even have things like how you want to manage a change process on there as well, so that your stakeholders are aware of this process. Or even though, trust me, even though some of them might be aware of the process, trust me, there are times where they don't even follow that process. Yeah, but as BAs, again, let's make sure that we we keep highlighting this process to them so that they know that this is something that we've agreed on. This is a process that we've agreed on to follow. Be flexible and adaptable within reason. So again, we're agile, we're working within an agile environment. Best assume that requirements are subject to change. Yeah, so let's not, as BAs, think that we've gathered the requirement, we've gotten requirements for our stakeholders. Yes, it's stamped, done, that's it. It's not going to change. Yeah, so let's be flexible and adaptable within reason. Let's understand that from the start. Let's just have it at the back of our at the back of our minds from the start, and assume that requirements are subject to change. Yeah, so with this approach, you establish a positive relationship with external, internal stakeholders already, and you increase your chances of a good relationship. Yeah, convey the impact of specific changes. So I won't dwell too much on this because I've mentioned something similar to that already. Convey the impact of specific changes. Yeah, like I said, stakeholders may not fully comprehend the indirect impact of a change. Yeah, they might not understand it in terms of the person hours, the effort being put in, the technical investigations that needs to be carried out, the cost and all of that. So be upfront on how specific changes may lead to unexpected complications and delays within the project. Make your stakeholders understand that, and understand as well, which changes can lead to significant ripple effects. Yeah, because there might be a change that would come in now, and then you accept that change, and then it leads to another ripple effects with other features or functionalities. You see why you need to get your developers involved in any change. Yeah, use requirements management software to set a change control process. Establish a prototyping mechanism. So I'm just going to move on very quickly, guys. How to win over difficult stakeholders. So just a few bullet points on a few bullet points that can help us, look at how we can win over difficult stakeholders. This is not an extensive, should I say extensive list, yeah, but this is just the ones I want to run through very quickly with you. Accept their authority. They are stakeholders. You are stakeholders as well. Do you get? But again, we understand that the level of interest and impact on it, my level of being a stakeholder is different from the level of a sponsor as a stakeholder. Do you get what I mean? So accept their authority, respect their authority, remove negative emotions. Eh? Don't take things too personal, or don't think it's a you thing. Don't think it's a you thing, because well, even if it's a you thing, don't let it affect the relationship and trust that you're trying to build with your stakeholders. So whatever personal thing or emotions or negative emotions that you have, leave it at the door. Leave it at the door, because you don't want that to affect that relationship that you're trying to build. You don't want it to affect the trust that you're trying to build. Once you lose relationship and trust with your stakeholders, to even get them to even communicate with you, or it would be difficult, and you don't want that. Yeah. Understand their negativity. Again, like I said, not all stakeholders are difficult because they want to be difficult. Yeah, you have stakeholders. I've worked with this on a project with a stakeholder that I thought this guy was being so difficult, because I tried to get this guy into a meeting, and this was when I was doing the build versus buy analysis. I was trying to get this guy, and it was also a sponsor as well, big sponsor, big stakeholder, to get this guy into a call. I could not get, this guy was not responding to my emails. It was not responding to my messages on Teams. I just could not get any time with this particular guy, with this stakeholder. And in my mind, I was already thinking, this guy is just a difficult stakeholder. Yeah. Then what did I do? I realized that this is someone that I need to speak to. I need to speak to this guy. I just need to speak to this guy. This guy is very important to this project. And I'm going almost 2 weeks into this project. I've spoken to a lot of other stakeholders. I've spoken to users, customers. I've spoken to third-party software vendors, but not this guy, because I just couldn't get this guy to respond to me. So I reached out to my line manager, and I spoke to my line manager and said, look, I'm trying to get at some, just give me 5 minutes in the room. Give me 5 minutes with this guy, please. I need some time. I'm not getting any response to my emails. I even copied my line manager in some of the emails, and I said, you remember, I CC'd you. I haven't gotten any response, blah, 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 blah. And then he said to me, actually, it's not that easy. He's not an easy person to get, because his calendar is back to back. It's filled back to back. So even if you look at his calendar at 9 o'clock in the morning, in his calendar, in that 9 o'clock slot in his calendar, you might actually see like 5 meetings on the 9 o'clock slot alone. How many of it will he attend? He'll probably just attend one. Do you get what I mean? So my line manager was like, he's a very difficult guy to get. His calendar is packed. But guess what, Tolu? You can get some time with this guy. And I said, how? How will I get time with this guy? And he says, go through his PA. And I was, oh, okay. I didn't even know he had a PA. So my line manager gave me the name of the PA, and I looked for the PA online on our Teams channel. And what I did was I sent the PA an email. I sent the PA a message on Teams. At least he will see one of them. Abi, he will see one of them. So I sent him an email, and I sent him a message on Teams, and I introduced myself to this guy. I told him about the project that I was working on, which everyone is aware was aware of that project anyway, because it was a big project. So I said, well, I'm the BA Scrum Master on this project, and I've been trying to get some time with this person for the past couple of days or weeks, and I have not been successful. So I've been advised by this other person, by, say, maybe John, to reach out with you. You're the best person for me to speak to help me get some time in the calendar with this person. And he responded, and he goes, oh, okay, no, that's fine. I'll definitely get you a slot. And let's say that was like on a Tuesday. Guess what? This guy sent me an email by the end of close of play that day, and said, Tolu, I've gotten you a 1 hour slot in this guy's calendar for tomorrow. And I was like, what? Do you get what I mean? And when I got on the call with this guy the next day for this, I was like, a whole 1 hour, 1 hour with this guy. That day after work, when I closed from work that day, I spent a good amount of time in my sitting room mapping out my questions and my plan. Like, I will make sure this 1 hour is productive with this guy. I will make sure it's productive. Do you get what I mean? So I went into that call. When I looked into the call, this guy was actually having his lunch, and it was like, oh, I do apologize that I'm eating once I'm on the call, but this is the only time I can get to eat lunch today. And I was like, look, my friend, eat lunch, eat dinner, eat, drink, do whatever you want to do on this call. Just do. As long as I'm here with you, I'm fine. Do you get what I mean? And the guy was on the call with me. The guy gave me his full 1 hour. I could not believe it. And that would tell you how important that project was to him as well. The guy gave me a full hour on that call. He ate, he drank, we laughed, we gisted on that call. Do you get what I mean? And it was really, really productive. And he was smiling with me, and he apologized. I said, oh my God, I've been trying to get through to you for a while now. I appreciate your time. And it was like, oh, I do apologize. My calendar is packed, but whenever you want to get some time in with me, just reach out to my PA. This project is really high priority for me right now. So whenever you need some time with me, just let my PA know, and I'll jump on a call with you. Do you get what I mean? And I had that 1 hour session with that guy. And the thing, what I did again? When I finished with him, before I left that call, and this is one thing I do as well, especially with stakeholders that are difficult to get some time in with. Yeah, this is what I do. When I see that I have about 5 minutes left on that call, I would say to them, all right, so I understand how busy your calendar and your schedule is, but can I just quickly put in some time? When next are you able to meet with me? If I can just quickly put in some time with you now. So before I leave that call, I've already fixed another time that I'm meeting with him. Are you okay with next week Tuesday? Next week Tuesday is really busy with me. I said, I know you've given me permission to speak to your PA, and I know your PA is also equally busy, but now that I have you here, are you able to put in some time with me? And then I got a time for that same week, I think it was on a Friday or Thursday that same week, with this same guy. And he just noted it down. He said, yeah, I'm popping this in my calendar. I'm putting it in as high priority. Yeah. So let's always make sure that we, understand their negativity as well, because they might not be difficult intentionally. Some of them are, but not all of them. Yeah. Ask for advice and listen. When you have a question to ask your stakeholders, please do not be too scared to ask them. It might be via email. Ask for advice. Don't assume. Don't just assume. Ask them for advice and listen. Listen. Attention to detail. Yeah, when they tell you something, listen. If you have suggestions, please feel free to bounce ideas and suggestions off them. But make sure that you're listening to them. Be tactful and honest. Yeah, be tactful and honest. Be open, be transparent. Know when to say, know when to say no, and know how to say no without saying no. Yeah. Now, make them feel good, be respectful, and show understanding as well. Tailor your communication. So stakeholders, again, like I mentioned earlier on, they have different needs and different expectations. Yeah, including the mode of comms. When I say mode of comms, mode of communication, they have different mode of communication. Like I said earlier on, Deji might prefer emails. I might prefer jumping on a call with you. Bolu might prefer face-to-face call with you. So tailor your communication, yeah, to their needs, to their preference, because they have different needs, they have different preferences, they have different expectations, they have different preferred mode of communication. So tailor your communication to their needs, to their expectations, to all of these things I've mentioned. Yeah. All right, let's move on very quickly. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at stakeholder power interest matrix, which is a stakeholder matrix that I spoke about earlier on. And then we'll have another slide again on our stakeholder involvement using our RACI, responsible, accountable, informed, yeah, and consulted. Yeah, so I will run through that as well very quickly with you. Okay, so this is what a basic stakeholder matrix would look. Most stakeholder matrix will usually look like this anyway that I've seen. There might be BAs that maps their own differently. This is how I map my stakeholder matrix, really. And it's all about you being able to analyze and prioritize your stakeholders based on their interest within the organization or the project, or based on the impact or the power or the influence that they have within that organization or on the project that you're working on. So we have high power, low interest, high power, high interest, low power, low interest, low power, high interest. So you can see on there that on that axis there, we have the high and we have the low at the bottom here. Yeah. And on this axis here, we have the low as well. And then we have, oh, my mouse. Yeah, we have the low as well. And then we have the high. Yeah. I've put customer ordering system here because I just used some, I just thought I would use that as an example, really, to be honest. Yeah. So when we say that we have high power, low interest, how did I come about high power, low interest? Now you would see that on this axis, this is our impact or our power. So I've put impact / power / influence. People call it different things. Yeah, it all means the same thing anyway. What stakeholder has the most impact, how much impact that they have, or how much impact will the project have on them, whichever way. Yeah. So we have high impact here on this axis, high power, high influence. Yeah. And then we have the low. So on here, you will see that we have the high power, low interest stakeholders. Yeah. Any stakeholders that falls into this part of your stakeholder matrix, we need to keep them satisfied. Yeah. We need to meet their needs and keep them satisfied. Yeah. High power, low interest stakeholders, these are your stakeholders that have a high influence. Yeah, they have a high influence. They have an high impact on the outcome of your project. Yeah. However, they might not necessarily have a direct interest. Yeah. So they necessarily might not use the product directly, sort of. Let's use that as an example. But even if they don't have direct interest in that product, they have a high influence on the outcome of that project. Yeah, you would see that I've put in there as an example, investors, sponsors, regulators. Yeah, so your investor, your sponsor, these guys are the guys that, the big guys, these guys are putting the money into this project. Do you get what I mean? So they have a high influence on the outcome of that project. If they stop pumping money into that project, the project will stop, it will fail. That's it, dead, ended. Yeah. So they have a high power and low interest. They necessarily do not have a direct interest in it, but their money is in it. Do you get what I mean? And also you can see that we have the regulator there as well. The regulator there, I've put that there because they are also stakeholders that will fall into this side part of the matrix. Because again, they have high influence on the outcome of the project. Not necessarily direct interest, but high influence. Because again, there might be regulations that you need to abide with. There might be laws that you need to abide with as well. And if you're not doing that, that can have a big impact on the outcome of your project. Again, whilst we're here, let's remember that stakeholders can move around. They can move around on this grid. Things can change. Positions can change here. Yeah. Now we have our high power, high interest. Yeah. And these are the stakeholders that we need to manage closely. They are key players. We need to engage them closely. So under there, I've put examples such as your subject matter experts that we spoke about earlier on. I've put examples of executives, even the BAs, the product owners. Yeah, they are key players, high power, high interest. These are the key stakeholders that have high influence and interest in that project, and they require full attention. Yeah. Now we have the low power, which is we have the low axis here. So on this axis and on this axis, they fall under the low category. So the low power here and the low interest here. Yeah. So these are the kind of, let's say, the least important or minimal, the guys that will put in minimal. Remember that I said earlier on that with stakeholders, you need to identify which ones are high level, the important ones that you need to interact with very quickly first. So the low power, low level interest stakeholders, these are stakeholders who barely have any influence or interest in your project. We have people that are working in departments, not directly impacted by the project. You know, I've put in some examples there, like your system admin, your help desk. You know, they have very low power on the project, you know, and low interest. And then we have the keep informed, which is the low power, high interest. So they have very low power, but they have high interest. So for these ones, we want to show them consideration and keep them informed. Yeah, these are stakeholders who have high interest. Yeah, high interest. However, they lack the power to create any impact. You know, they mentor and support, but they are not directly involved. So under that category, you can have your developers, your suppliers, your internal users, your testers. You know, we show them considerations and we keep them informed. Those are your low power and high interest stakeholders. But again, remember that on your stakeholder metrics, nothing is set in stone. Things can change. Things can move around. Yeah, your product owner who is on a high power, high interest on a grid here can move to high power, low interest on this grid at a later point. Yeah, your product owner can become a sponsor as well. You know, you might have a developer that would move around, or your system admin might become, you know, things move around on this grid. So let's just understand and know that. Sorry, my mouse is playing up. Let's just understand and let's just know that at the back of our mind that our stakeholder matrix, and we've seen that on one of the earlier slides that we went through. Your stakeholder matrix is not set in stone. Things, keep a close eye on it and update it regularly, because things can change. Stakeholders can change. Stakeholders, the level of power, the level of impact that they have within the organization or within the project can change. People get promoted. Do you get what I mean? So things can move around and change. So it's something that you want to keep a close eye on and update as you go as a BA. So what I have here is a project stakeholder impact analysis matrix table. So as BAs, I would advise that this is something that you should also, so all these tables and matrix that I'm showing you now, we've touched on them earlier on, but I just want to give, you know, I want you to look at an example of what it can look like. Yeah. So for this, we've spoken about this earlier on as well. As BAs, it would be good as well to have what this will do for you. So your stakeholder matrix is helping you to understand and prioritize your stakeholders based on the level of interest, the level of impact that they have, and all of that. Yeah. Now, what this will do for you as BAs is, on this table here, you will be able to detail the names of all those stakeholders that you've received. Yeah. You want to now use this table to analyze those stakeholders. Yeah. Those stakeholders. You've identified their priority. Yeah. So you want to, like this, the stakeholders' names are here. Impact of project on them. How much impact does the project have on them? Influence over the project. How much influence do they have over the project? What exactly is important to DG on the maintenance department? What is important to Pat as a finance head? What is important to Tolu as the head of IT? You're analyzing, you're using this table to analyze, because this would also help you when you're speaking to DG, you have you understand what you're speaking to DG about. You're not going to DG, you're not going to go and start speaking to DG about about cash flow. You understand what you're going to DG to speak to DG about. How could the stakeholder contribute to the project? You analyze that. How can Tolu, how can Pat, how can they help contribute to the project? Do you understand? You're basically just, so this is an example, but you're basically using this table to analyze in detail, which would help you with communication. You know, when you want to communicate with the stakeholders, you want to make sure, like I said earlier on, you're communicating with the right stakeholder, you're asking the right questions and all of that. Yeah. Now, strategy for engaging the stakeholder, you have that here already. Yeah, monthly roundtable discussions with DG. Pat prefers emails. Tolu prefers weekly discussions via Teams or via Zoom or whatever. Yeah, so that helps you to also, once you've identified your stakeholders, yeah, and you've mapped out your stakeholders using the stakeholder matrix, you analyze each of your stakeholders. You analyze the impact they have on the project, the impact the project has on them, the influence they have on the project, the influence the project has over them, what is important to them, what are they contributing, how are they contributing, what are the strategies for engaging those particular stakeholders. The RACI, the stakeholder involvement using the RACI. So the RACI is responsible, who's responsible for what, who's accountable for what, who needs to be consulted on a particular matter or whatever, who needs to be kept informed. And then, usually the most common one would be RACI, which is what I use. But sometimes you would find that some people would use the RACI with the S, with the support. Do you get? So, but I usually just use the RACI, RACI. And what that would help you with is it would help you analyze and identify for each of your stakeholders. Remember, you're also stakeholders, like I mentioned earlier. For each of the stakeholders, who is responsible for what? Who is accountable for what? For whatever that is responsible for, I don't want to be chasing Tolu up and down for it. Whatever Tolu is accountable for, I don't want to be chasing Pat up and down for it, because that's not good use of my time. So I want to lay out, on my RACI matrix, who is responsible for what? Who is accountable for what? Who should I consult? Who should be consulted? Who should be kept informed? Because there are some stakeholders, there are some people that they just need to be kept informed. They're not necessarily accountable for that, for a particular thing, but they need to be kept informed about it. Yeah, and this is an example of a RACI matrix that I prepared here. And this is just a template that I've sort of like removed some things on it that I've used on a previous project before. Yeah, so I created this so you can see that I have the different roles here. I have this. So when you see PBI, so PBI is just Power BI. That it was a data project. So you have the Power BI product owner, Power BI Scrum Master, Power BI engagement managers, business SMEs, which are the subject matter experts. You have the Power BI business analyst, and you have your ERS developers. So I wouldn't really talk about what ERS is. I should have removed that, but that's fine. ERS developers. So ERS developers, those are just your developers anyway, the developers and the QAs, the testers. So what I've used this for as my RACI document is I've been able to put the different tasks up here. This should be okay. So I have different tasks up here. I have things like requirements gathering, requirements analysis and alignment, scoping of requirements added to the product backlog, who is responsible for adding requirements to the product backlog, who is accountable for it, prioritization of the product backlog, who's responsible for it, who's accountable for it, things like that. UAT, I have UAT here right at the end here as well. Who's responsible, who is accountable, who needs to be kept informed, who needs to be consulted. Apologies, I'm not sure why some of those texts are showing in white rather than black. Internal QA as well. We have the internal QA here, which you already know that even on our board, on your Azure board, you have your QA and then you have your UAT. So your QA would come before your UAT. So I have all of that on here, and I have just a little bit of summary description underneath each of them as well to say for requirement alignment, which is to align on output from user research and all other requirements and relative priority of items. So that's basically what you have at the top here of my RACI document. And then on the side, again, I've mentioned these are the different team members and all of that. So I've put on there, you would see that I've said for the product owner is responsible for agreement of the phase goal and prioritization of backlog. Responsible. Consulted in this, under this, we have consulted, kept informed, responsible, and accountable, informed. Yeah. And then the Scrum Master, you will see that there are lots of informed with the Scrum Master as well. The business SMEs, you will see that there are lots of consulted in there, informed. And that's just what that RACI document is about. It helps you to understand who is responsible for what, who is accountable for what, who do we need to consult, who do we need to keep informed. Yeah, so that's what that looks like. There are different templates. So I created this using, I created this on not Power BI. I created this on PowerPoint, but you can use different templates to create your RACI matrix. Yeah, and I think that's it. Any questions? I think, yeah, so I've got 15 minutes. Yeah, I'm surprised I was able to reserve 15 minutes of my time. So any questions? I'm happy to take questions now.
Right, Tolu, you've got three people with. So do you want to take us in that order? You've got people with their hands raised up.
Okay, so let me stop sharing. Thanks for telling me that. Let me stop sharing so I can see people on the screen. Okay. All right. So apologies if you raised your hands first, but I will just call out as I'm seeing on my screen. Adewumi.
Yeah, hi Tolu, thank you so much. That was powerfully delivered. Um, First question was going to be on racing metrics. You actually referred to something else. Yeah, when you were talking about analyzing and prioritizing stakeholders, you mentioned the stakeholder matrix. The first question was going to be, did you mean racing matrix? But then you've covered the racing matrix, so I'm
Mhm.
presuming that's what you meant. Right.
Yeah, so
Second question.
those are two different two different. So you have your stakeholder matrix and you have your racy matrix that you can different purposes, but it's up
Yeah.
to you how you want to work around it. But I keep both documents to be honest. It comes in really handy.
Okay, thanks. And the second question quickly actually is on the gated development changes.
Mhm.
So you explained it in a way from explanation is to me it sounded as if it's not an agile product. So in the case
Mhm.
where an organization, say Nature Grid, for instance, where I'm working as a for the senior leadership team buy in, we have to get a buy-in for them to through change management process for a change to go through. So for instance, in an organization where they they're deploying agile, but as you said, there's an I don't want to call them an external body. So they have that body that you have to get their buy-in, like the guys you just mentioned now. The gated development changes. So there's a team that deals with that in-house, right? So are you
Yeah.
saying their decision would overpower what the PO states as the requirements for the project if they don't buy into it? That's my question. So do they override any decision? Let's call them SLT, senior leadership team, for instance, and then the in-house gated development change team. So would their decision override what the PO states as the requirements for the project? That's my big concern. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I would use again myself as an example because I did say that we use that process as well at work. And I did also say earlier on that it's anti-agile. I know it's anti-agile. We never used to really do that, but that's just something that the organization came up with, a process they came up with early last year. And it's just about let me say we're starting a project, for example, okay, discovery, we're doing our discovery. We have within that discovery, we have acceptance criteria, that things that we need to meet, things that we need to have done before we can say that yes, we're ready to now start going into sprints and start developing. Yeah, so those are like check boxes. Now we have the governance team, like you said, they're in-house. Yeah, and maybe because it's a government our clients are, we've got a government client anyway, a public sector. But what we do is we make sure that we're all ready. We've completed our discovery. We've completed all those check boxes and all of that. And we then present it to these guys on a call. We send it to them via email. We complete the form and then we get on a call with them. Like I said, it can be time consuming, but because we're working in sprints, it doesn't stop the work that we're doing. So I will explain it a little bit more detail. So we get it's not, I don't know if I should say buy in, but we just sort of get that approval to say that, yes, we've checked all the acceptance criteria that we need to check in terms of our testing process, how we want to do this, how we want to do that. Yes, we're happy to start um, going into development and stuff like that. So it takes a bit of it does waste time, but it doesn't stop the work from going on. So like, let's say we've done that for discovery and they've looked at it and they've said, oh yes, so we're happy to start, we've gone past discovery. Yes, we've checked all the boxes. We're going into sprint one. It's not like at the end of sprint one, we have to submit any governance gate again. No. at the end of sprint 2, we have to submit governance gate. No, that's not what happens. But what would happen is, whilst we're developing in sprint, we already know that we have a release plan in place to say we want to release on a monthly, for example. So we know that if we're releasing at the end of February, we know that we want to, the BA would start, whilst development is going on, the BA understands for the release process, what are the acceptance criteria that we need to meet for us to say that, yes, the release process can sort of, we're happy, we've met all the checks for the release process. Do you get what I mean? So we check those boxes, the BAs prepare those documents, submit them to governance gate. So it's anti-pattern, to be honest with you, and it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work and documentation for the BA, even on an agile project, to be honest with you. And I'm not the only agile person or scrum master that I've spoken out or tried to find out, why are we doing this and all of that. The last time I checked and I asked the question, it was all about the client wants this, the client wants that, the client.
Yes.
Do you get what I mean? So it's not really like the PO. The PO is involved in the process, to be honest with you. So it's not like the PO is the one that is actually doing the checks. I wouldn't say it has nothing to do with the PO, to be honest with you, but it's not the PO that is really doing the check. It's a bit complicated, but it is, sometimes when you get into an organization, they have a culture in place. That wasn't the culture when I joined, to be honest, but it's something that was requested for by the client. It was a process that was put in place. And maybe because it's a high profile product, the products that we're working on, maybe because they are high profile products where, we deal with top governmental directors and people at the top there, so might be why we have all these checks in place for the products that we're developing. So it is anti-agile. I agree with you. I did mention that earlier on. But we call it governance gates. We just have to get those approvals, those sign-offs. Let me say sign-offs really for those different phases of work. If that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It's just that so I'm just bringing it back to the environment where we're going to be working, because those guys that I'm talking about, they're influential as well. They're very powerful, and it's not even agile. And if they don't buy in, we call it buy. If they don't buy in, then the project doesn't go ahead. So we need to get that decision. So yeah, it makes sense totally. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, even for us, I think the discovery side of things is if we don't get that sign off, we're not able to actually start development. I think for us, that's where we have kind of like a problem to make sure that we get past that stage. Once we get past the discovery stage, to be honest with you, the approval for the other stages are usually quite straightforward. The worst that I've seen happen on a governance call is they might come back and say, it's a governance call, we're going to be on Teams, just like we're all on Teams right now. And we would have submitted the document to them, we'll all be on Teams, and I would go through, you submitted a governance gate for so products, we've gone through it, we're happy to sign off on it. Or they might say, we're happy to sign up on it, but there's a caveat, like we need you to quickly put this there or add this link. So we have our governance gates documented on Confluence. So they might just say to me, oh, can you just put this link on for architecture or whatever. Can you just add this link to your governance documentation on Confluence? Once you've added that link, we're happy to sign off. Just things like that. So I understand it's a big headache, but yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Lola Sadi.
Yeah. Hi, Tolu. Thank you so much for that session. It was so interesting and I really enjoyed it. Yeah. So my first question is it okay to take developers to meetings? Like if maybe a particular stakeholder is making certain suggestions that you've spoken with your developers already and they don't think it's feasible, and instead of avoiding the back and forth, you decide to arrange a meeting where you take your developers with you too. Is that okay?
Okay, so you might find some cases where you might need like your lead developer. You get to join a call with you because there might be some technicalities that you're not able to explain, or some technical terminologies and stuff that you might not be able to explain in detail. Do you get what I mean? So in such situations, you might invite your lead developer. So I wouldn't necessarily take, if you have like 3 developers and 2 QAs. I wouldn't necessarily say include all of them in that invite. No, let's try not to do that. You get what I mean? Because you want to bring in the right people to the call. So I would say maybe your lead tech, your tech lead, or you can bring your tech lead in, or and something I've done before is in a situation like that, aside from the developers that I have on my team, we also have like a tech lead as well. So when we have conversations like that, sometimes I involve the tech lead. So the tech lead is in the know-how of what's going on and everything. So if I'm going into a call like that, and what if your lead developer is on annual leave when the call is going to happen? Do you get what I mean? So I involve the tech lead. So if the tech lead is able to join the call, I bring the tech lead in on the call. So all the technical whatever jargons and stuff, the tech lead is able to explain in detail. But then I would not be going into that call not being able to talk about anything at all. Do you get what I mean? So I want to make sure that I have clear understanding of all these things, even from my developers. So when I'm going into the call, before I even call the tech leads to even say anything, do you get what I mean? I've already stated clearly what these in terms of change, or why we can't take a change in, or the feasibility of it all. I'm going into that meeting and I'm kicking off that meeting. I'm facilitating that meeting and kicking off that meeting by talking about all the challenges, the obstacles, or delivery deadline issues that we might have, and all of that. And then I can just say, I've got Lola, our tech lead, on the call as well. Lola, I'm happy for you to give a bit more detail explanation on. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you. So the next one is,
in addition to that, in addition to that, because I think that question just brought a thought to my mind. Can I just say that please let's not go into calls with our stakeholders and not speak at all. If you go into the first one, you can get away with it. Let's not make it an habit to join calls with stakeholders. Maybe your product owner is there as well, and then your product owner is doing all the talking, the stakeholders are doing all the talking, and for the whole 30 minutes duration of the call, or the whole 45 or 1 hour of the call, you're just there silent, and they're just seeing your face or your name there. You're not even saying anything at all. You're going into a call, you already know that you're going into that meeting. You know what that meeting is about. Have a bit of think about what you can bring on board, what you can talk about, or even if you don't have anything ready, that you can talk about or whatever, make sure that even whilst you're on the call, you're listening to what they're talking about. Because even from you listening to what they're talking about, you would have questions, even if it's just one question to ask, or even if it's just one thing to say. Let them know you're there. I'm not saying go and start asking irrelevant questions. Please, you can ask irrelevant questions on this platform. We're happy to answer and correct and all of that. But I'm not saying that because I want them to know Tolu is here and I want to talk. Let them know Tolu is here. Then I just want to throw a question open. No, let's not do that necessarily. But from the discussions that they will be having, if I'm listening and I'm there and I'm actively there listening to the conversations, I'll probably have one question, at least one question to ask, or at least one input into what they're talking about. And that just came to my mind, and I just wanted to throw that out there, because I've had people.
Thank you so much.
I've had people start work, and then they say to me, "Oh, Tolu, my land manager said to me the other day that why is it that when time I'm in meetings with them and the stakeholders, I'm always muted, I'm not talking." That means they've noticed. That means that person has made it an habit. So I'm like, so what are you doing in the meeting? You two, what are you always doing in the meeting? Are you just there to observe? Don't you have questions from everything that they say? When people are talking for 30 minutes to 1 hour, you two, you don't have anything to say, to add to it, or you don't have any question to ask or any input to give. Even when you're gisting with your friend or you're talking with somebody one-to-one, you would say something. You won't be quiet throughout. That person will not be the only person talking. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Let them know you're part of that conversation. Let them know you're listening to what they're talking about. Let them know that you're there to add value, to what's happening in the background. Okay, all right. You have another question?
Yes. So I know you've touched on managing difficult stakeholders, but the particular scenario you gave was more about someone that is hard to reach than being difficult. So in a situation where a key stakeholder, maybe a sponsor, like the example you gave, is being difficult, maybe they don't even want somebody like you to be in that position and they just don't want to agree, or maybe they believe that they are just right and they don't want to consider your own opinion. They just believe that they know better than you. How do you then manage it?
Okay, so again, it depends on the situation, but I would say that if I have a stakeholder that I'm trying to communicate with or I'm trying to reach out to, and the person isn't just giving me, any attention at all, or even I'm getting attention from the person and anything I say does not go at all. The person just wants it to be their own way. Do you get what I mean? Now, once I've had that meeting with that person, what I'm doing, because you need to also make sure that you're also covering your back. Do you get what I mean? What I'm doing is at the end of the call, and I usually do this with stakeholders as well. At the end of the call, I will send an email to that person to thank them for their time, for joining the call. Yeah. And I will say, just for them to see that, to check that I haven't missed anything out that was discussed during the call. I will put the points that we discussed there. I'll put the points that we discussed there. And if I have to include my line manager on there, I will include my line manager on there as well. But at the end of the day, what would happen is that at least there's that thread, there's that thread to show that this was what you asked for. This was what you requested for. This was what you said we should do. This was what you said you wanted. You get what I mean? If a stakeholder is being so difficult that, I'm even with the PA, I'm not able to get their attention, for example. To say even after going to the personal assistant, say I'm not getting that attention, I'm not getting that time. You know what I did in the first instance? I went to my line manager, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'll do the same thing. So that is me escalating it without escalating it to their own boss. So I'm not escalating it to the stakeholders and Oga. You understand? I'm talking. So I'll just give a quick example. So on the project, okay, I'm echoing. Lola, if you mute, please.
Okay.
And then you can unmute if you, yeah, all right, cool, thank you. So on a project, I have actually, this same project, this same stakeholder that I was eventually able to meet with. So we had two products, that we were considering building or buying, And this stakeholder, remember I said it was also a key sponsor as well. So already before I was able to meet with him, my line manager, the chief technical officer, and a few other stakeholders had already told me that out of these two products that we're looking at building or buying, A is the highest priority. So we want to start building or buying A first. We want to start working on A first. So any research you do or you carry out, prioritize product A first. Yeah. So let's get on that one first before we start, so any requirements gathering I'm doing right now has to be on product A. Do you get what I mean? So remember I said it took me almost 2 weeks before I was able to finally get to speak to this guy. So all the requirements gathering I was doing, all the research I was doing, even scheduling meetings with third-party software vendors and all of that, it was based on product A. Bear with me 1 second, please. It was based on product A, yeah? Now, when I eventually got to meet with this lovely guy, and I started gathering requirements for him, at a point it was like, so what's happening with this other product? I said, oh, well, I've been told that this is of high priority and this is the one that we need to pick up first and start working on first. And this guy said to me, no, that's wrong. That's not, product B is actually a priority for him. And remember I said he's a big stakeholder because he's also a key sponsor for this product. And look at me, for the past 2 weeks, I've been gathering requirements from other stakeholders. I've been gathering requirements I've been meeting with the users. I've been gathering their pain points. In fact, I've already started creating my assist process map for the current system that they have that we're trying to build a new one for. I started creating that. And this guy was the only person that I hadn't really been able to speak to. And then I get a chance to speak to him after 2 weeks. And this guy is telling me that all the work I have done for product A, I should put a stop to, and I should start on product B. You can imagine. Of course, I was smiling. I didn't let the frustration show. Do you get what I mean? But I said to him, I said, well, this person, that person, that person, I've spoken to them, and they did actually say, they reiterated to me that product A is of the highest priority right now. I'm a bit, because, okay, so why would you rather we prioritize product B over product A? Because remember, the other guys that gave me product A as priority, they told me why we're prioritizing A over B. So now this guy is telling me that no, B should be more of higher priority. So before I leave that call, I want to check with him what is his own reason for prioritizing product B. And he explained to me that because of this, because of that, because of this, because of that, we need product B first. So I said, okay, remember I said again that he gave me an hour of his time. So that 1 hour was productive for me. I wasn't really prepared to ask him questions on product B because remember product A had been prioritized for me. So there and then, BAs, let's try and also get the skills of thinking on our feet as well. Then and there, because even though I was working on product A, in my own time, I would also usually just check on product B. I would write out a few things in my notepad as well on product B. Even though I was prioritizing product A, I was still preparing myself for product B. And that really helped me because I was just like, okay, so I just opened my notepad quickly. And some of the things I noted down for product B, I just started asking him. And then I did not promise him that I was going to switch to product B. But what I did was I asked him questions about product B. I still asked about product A as well, but I asked him questions about product B. And I said to him, okay, thanks for clarifying the priorities to me, John. I would also, get back to Deji, Pat, Bolu, and Wumi as well, just to check with them again the priority from their side so that we're all aligned on what we need to prioritize, on the work that we need to prioritize. So that way I've said to him that thanks for giving me that update that this has changed, that the priorities have changed, but I would be liaising with these other guys as well because I need to also keep them in the loop. Remember, we went through that slide. Keep your stakeholders in the loop. I needed to also keep them in the loop on what you've talked about just now so that we are all aligned on what we're doing. And he said, yeah, that's fine. Keep me copied in any comms or any emails that you send. And I was, yeah, sure, definitely. As soon as I came out of that call, there are some things that you cannot leave till the next day if you can deal with them that day. As soon as I came out of the call, immediately I pinged my line manager on Teams. No, sorry, I think it was Slack. It was Slack we were using then. I pinged my line manager on Slack and I said, have you got 5 minutes? Have you got 5 minutes? Can I get 5 minutes of your time, please? If you can jump on a call very quickly. And he goes, yes. So I jumped on a call with him and I said, well, I've just come off a meeting with this person and this is what he said. And my line manager was like, no, that can't be right. So see how they're dribbling me up and down. It's okay. I didn't mind. My own is dribble me. At least you're paying me for the work that I'm doing anyway. So, he said to me that can't be right. Do you get what I mean? That can't be right. Product A is the priority. So I said, well, the thing here is I would really appreciate if yourself, this person, and the other guys that said product A was priority, I mentioned their names. If yourself, this person, that person, I would really appreciate if you can actually put some time in with these other stakeholders and just, have a chat with him. I really need to know which products we're prioritizing because I'm getting different messaging from different people. So I really appreciate if you can jump on a call with this guy. If you guys can jump on a call with him, and please do let me know which of these products we're prioritizing. Do you get what I mean? That way, I've sent him on the message. You people should go and get your hack. That's basically what I've just said to him. Guys, go and get your acts together and let me know what we're doing here. Do you get what I mean? So it depends on the situation. It depends on how difficult that stakeholder is being. This one too is not really being difficult again at the end of the day. Do you get what I mean? It's just that they just needed to get their comms right, kind of. So it depends on the situation. But sometimes when you find yourself in that situation, trust me, you would be able to think about how you want to work out it. But do it in a respectful, diplomatic kind of way. Don't be too direct. Do you get what I mean? So I didn't go and say, no, that's not what I was told. I wasn't told that. I wasn't told this. I was told this, and I've been working on it for the past 2 weeks. I didn't. No, there's no point. There's no need. Do you get what I mean? So I don't know if that answers your questions, but depending on the situation, there are different ways that you can always manage that stakeholder or manage that situation, but don't take things too personal. So like you said, maybe it's because of me as a person. If you look, I'm not here for you to like me as a person. Let's just get the job done. Do you get what I mean? Let's just get the job done. So I won't take it. If you don't like me, you don't like me. You don't have to like everybody, but I will not take it personal. I will be professional about it. I won't take it personal. What's the evidence that you don't like me? Have you said something to me that you don't like? You understand? So even if I know at the back of my mind that this person doesn't like me, I know it at the back of my mind, but I will get on with professionalism. Do you get what I mean? And I will just, if it needs to be escalated, look at the way I'm going back and forth with my land manager. Do you understand? So if this person doesn't like me, that's why I said on one of my slides that there are some stakeholders that you need to manage closely because they are there to make the project fail. Again, because they don't like you and they just want you to fail so that they can sack you. Do you get what I mean? So you need to understand how to manage these guys. Really important. For BAs, you will be working. You will, not you might. You will be working with stakeholders, top stakeholders in some cases. It's just understanding how to manage these guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for shedding loads of light on that. So lastly, I know that SMEs can be internal or external. So the external ones, do you usually pay them for their time, like consultation?
I don't pay anybody. I get paid. The company will pay them.
Okay. Yes, I meant, does the company pay them? Yeah.
I don't know. I would assume that the company pays them. It's just like you asking me if my company pays me. You get what I mean? I want to assume that the company pays them for their time, as long as it's not coming out of my own of my money.
So I'm thinking that some of them will be people that don't, like, they are not employees of the company. Are there SMEs like that?
You might find SMEs like that. I haven't worked with SMEs that are not employees of the company. Okay, so no. All right. So now let me put it this way. So I've worked with SMEs that are not employees of my organization, but are employees on the client side.
Okay.
Do you get what I mean? So that means that my organization would necessarily not pay them because they're not members of staff on my organization, but they work with the client. So it's the client's responsibility to pay them. Whatever their agreement or contract is that is signed with them, it doesn't have anything to do with me. They've been identified to me as SMEs, and my job is to liaise with them.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you. I don't think we have any. Rose, Lola, if you can put your hands down, please. Thank you. I think we just have Rose. Rose, do you still have a question?
Well, yeah, somehow, but you've already spoken extensively on stakeholder management. It's just that happens to something like
Rose, you're breaking off, so I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's very faint though. It's very low. Maybe if you want to type your question in the chat box very quickly.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it's better now. Yeah.
Okay. So if as a BA, I'm not able to agree with a developer, for example, should give the final pass the final say. Like the PO has told me, has prioritized his needs, yes, and I've gone ahead to do my sprint based on what the PO has told me. But the developer wants to move ahead.
Okay,
should I
all right. So you're still breaking off, but from what I gather from your question, let me know if it's a yes or no, if I'm right or wrong. You've gathered your requirements. Your PO has told you what needs to be, what stories to put in the backlog and stuff like that, and you've done that. And then probably during the sprint planning, the developer disagrees with what you have put in your story. Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So your developer disagrees with the story you've put in your backlog to say that, no, this story or this acceptance criteria shouldn't be written this way. Your question should be, okay, all right, why? So why do you think, or what do you think should be different about it? Or why do you think this should be written differently? Yeah. Now, usually you would have your product owner in your sprint planning with you. So when a developer disagrees with a story like that, usually your product owner will be on the call and they're able to clarify to that developer. Yeah. Now, if the product owner is not on the call and you're on the call as a de facto product owner and your developer disagrees with what you've put in your ticket as your story or acceptance criteria, just check with them. So what part of this do you disagree with? So why do you disagree? What do you think it should look like? Because this is what I gathered from the stakeholder as the requirements. So if they now explain to you what they disagree with, then if you need to clarify, just let them know that, okay, all right, cool. So I would need to clarify and check this with Deji, who is the product owner. And of course, I would let Deji understand, but because it's sprint planning and that ticket has been prioritized to go into sprint, then it might be. So remember I said on my session I had with you on agile roles, the PO, the Scrum Master, the BAs, the testers and developers and stuff, to say that when as a BA, you will be expected to work very closely with your product owner and your stakeholders. So whatever your stakeholder will give as a response, you should be able to give as a response as well to the developers. Yeah, as long as you have gotten that requirement clear and accurately detailed, it is up to you to now say that, well, this is what the requirement says. This is what the users has asked for. This is what the client or the customers or the business has requested for in this requirement. Yeah. Now you can go ahead and take that prioritize to get into sprint, but what you will need to do again is to try and put in a call with the product owner and that developer just to clarify things for that developer. You can take that route again. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question. Any other question? Okay. If there are no other questions, admin, I think that is me done. Thank you everyone for joining the call. Admin, I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about with the guys on the call. Otherwise, I'm happy for us to end the call. That's it from me tonight. Do we have the admin there?
Yeah. Polu is here. Thank you so much
hi,
for the class. Yeah. Good evening. Yeah. So I don't think there's anything that we want to tell them from the admin side. Yeah. So can end the call.
Cool.
Thank you everyone for coming.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the call, and I hope it has been productive for you all. Do enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.